Greenland is the world's largest island. It has just 56,000 people. 80% of it is covered in ice. It's one of the most remote, inhospitable places on Earth. And suddenly, everyone wants it. The United States offered to buy it twice. China is investing billions. Russia is expanding military bases nearby. Why? Because climate change is melting Greenland's ice, and underneath that ice is something worth fighting for. Rare earth minerals, oil, gas, and control of the Arctic. This frozen island is about to become the most contested piece of real estate on the planet. Greenland is 2.166 million square kilometers, about 3 times the size of Texas. It's technically part of the Kingdom of Denmark, but it has significant autonomy. The population is 56,000 mostly Inuit Greenlanders living almost entirely on the coast because the interior is a massive ice sheet. For centuries, Greenland was ignored. Too cold, too remote, too expensive to develop. But in the past 20 years, everything changed. The ice is melting, shipping routes are opening, resources are becoming accessible. And Greenland has suddenly become one of the most geopolitically important territories in the world. So why does everyone suddenly care about a frozen island with fewer people than a small city? Let's start with what's under Greenland's ice. Geological surveys estimate Greenland contains rare earth minerals worth potentially trillions of dollars, significant oil and natural gas reserves, uranium, iron ore, zinc, and gold. Fresh water. About 10% of the world's fresh water is locked in Greenland's ice. Rare earth minerals are the key. These are essential for modern technology: smartphones, electric vehicles, wind turbines, military hardware. Currently, China controls about 70% of global rare earth production. The West is desperate to find alternative sources. Greenland might have some of the world's largest rare earth deposits. For decades, these resources were locked under kilometers of ice. Extraction was impossible or economically unviable. But climate change is melting the Greenland ice sheet faster than predicted. Coastal regions that were frozen year-round are now accessible. Mining companies can reach deposits that were previously untouchable. Here's the brutal irony. Climate change, caused partly by burning fossil fuels, is making it easier to extract more fossil fuels from Greenland. And that's exactly what everyone wants to do. Now let's talk about geography. Look at where Greenland sits. It's between North America and Europe, controls access to the Arctic Ocean, and sits along emerging Arctic shipping routes. As Arctic ice melts, new shipping lanes are opening. The Northern Sea Route along Russia's coast and the Northwest Passage through Canada's Arctic could reduce shipping times between Asia and Europe by 40%. Ships wouldn't need to go through the Suez Canal or around Africa. Greenland sits right in the middle. Any country that controls Greenland controls access to these routes. And then there's military strategy. During the Cold War, Greenland was crucial. The U.S. built Thule Air Base in 1951, one of the northernmost military installations in the world. It's still operating today, hosting early warning systems for ballistic missiles and satellites. From Greenland, you can monitor the entire Arctic. You can track Russian submarines. You can control airspace over the North Atlantic. Militarily, Greenland is one of the most strategic locations on Earth. The United States. The U.S. has wanted Greenland for over a century. In 1946, President Truman offered Denmark $100 million for Greenland. Denmark refused. In 2019, President Trump proposed buying it again. Denmark called the idea absurd. But the U.S. interest is serious. Greenland provides strategic military positioning against Russia and China, access to Arctic resources, control of shipping routes, a buffer between North America and hostile powers. The U.S. already has Thule Air Base and a security agreement with Denmark. But as Greenland moves toward independence, that arrangement might change. China. China calls itself a near-Arctic state, which is absurd because China is nowhere near the Arctic. But China is investing heavily in Greenland anyway. Chinese companies have proposed building mining operations for rare earth minerals, constructing airports, investing in infrastructure development, establishing research stations. Denmark and the U.S. have blocked several Chinese projects, fearing they're strategic rather than commercial. In 2018, Denmark helped Greenland fund airport expansions specifically to prevent Chinese involvement. China wants Greenland for resources and strategic positioning. If China controls rare earth extraction in Greenland, it maintains its monopoly on critical minerals. Russia. Russia is expanding military infrastructure across the Arctic. They're reopening Soviet-era bases, building new airfields, and deploying advanced weapons systems along their Arctic coast. Russia doesn't directly claim Greenland, but they're positioning themselves to control Arctic shipping routes and resources. Greenland sits at the western edge of the Arctic theater, where Russia is expanding influence. If conflict arose in the Arctic, Greenland would be central. Russia knows this, the US knows this, everyone is positioning. European Union. The EU wants access to Greenland's resources to reduce dependence on Chinese rare earths and Russian energy. But Greenland left the EU in 1985 over fishing rights disputes. If Greenland becomes independent, the EU will push for trade agreements and investment deals. They can't let China or Russia monopolize Greenland's resources. Greenland is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, but this relationship is complicated. Denmark colonized Greenland in the 18th century. For centuries, Greenlanders were treated as second-class citizens. In 1979, Greenland gained home rule. In 2009, they gained self-governance control over most domestic affairs. Denmark still controls foreign policy, defense, and provides about $600 million annually in subsidies, roughly 20% of Greenland's GDP. But Greenland wants full independence. The problem? Economics. Greenland's economy is tiny, about $3 billion GDP for 56,000 people. The main industries are fishing and tourism. Without Danish subsidies, Greenland would struggle to function. Independence requires economic self-sufficiency. That means developing the resource sector. But developing resources requires foreign investment. And accepting foreign investment, especially from China or Russia, raises security concerns with Denmark and the US. Greenland is caught. They want independence, but achieving it might require deals that compromise their strategic autonomy. Here's what often gets missed. Greenlanders themselves have complicated feelings about this attention. For centuries, outsiders have viewed Greenland as empty space to be claimed or exploited. The Inuit population has been here for thousands of years. Mining brings jobs and revenue. Greenland needs both. But it also brings environmental damage, cultural disruption, and the risk of becoming a pawn in great power competition. Many Greenlanders support resource development as a path to independence. Others worry that trading Danish control for Chinese or American influence isn't real freedom. Some oppose large-scale mining for environmental and cultural reasons. There's no consensus. Greenlanders debate whether to prioritize economic development, environmental protection, cultural preservation, or political autonomy. Often these goals conflict. The world sees Greenland as a strategic prize. Greenlanders see it as home, and they're watching their home become a geopolitical battleground. Climate change is accelerating everything. Greenland's ice sheet is melting faster than worst-case scenarios predicted. In 2019, Greenland lost 532 billion tons of ice. In some years, it loses enough ice to raise global sea levels measurably. This creates a feedback loop. Warming climate melts ice. Resources become accessible. Countries compete to extract resources. Extraction accelerates climate change. Climate change melts more ice. Greenland is both a victim of climate change and potentially a driver of it if massive fossil fuel extraction occurs. By 2050, some models suggest Greenland's coastal regions could be ice-free in summer. Mining operations that are currently impossible could become routine. Shipping routes could be open year-round. This isn't hypothetical. It's happening now. Every year, more ice melts. Every year, Greenland becomes more accessible. Every year, geopolitical competition intensifies. So what happens next? Several possible futures. Scenario 1. Greenland remains. Denmark maintains control. The US keeps Thule Air Base. Western companies develop resources under strict environmental regulations, and China is mostly excluded. This is the status quo, but it's unstable because Greenlanders want independence. Scenario 2. Greenland becomes independent with Western alignment. Greenland gains independence, maintains close ties with the US and EU, develops resources responsibly, and becomes economically self-sufficient. This is the Western ideal scenario. Scenario 3. Greenland becomes independent with Chinese investment. Desperate for economic development, Greenland accepts massive Chinese investment in mining and infrastructure. China gains strategic foothold in the Arctic. The US views this as a security threat. Tensions escalate. Scenario 4. Greenland becomes a neutral zone. Greenland declares independence and neutrality, plays powers against each other for investment while maintaining independence. This requires extraordinary diplomatic skill and might not be sustainable. Scenario 5. Arctic conflict resource competition leads to military tensions. The Arctic becomes a zone of conflict with Greenland at the center. This is worst case but increasingly possible as ice melts and stakes rise. Experts suggest Greenland could declare independence within 10 to 20 years. When that happens, the scramble for influence will intensify. Every major power will offer deals, investments, and security guarantees. Greenland's decision will reshape Arctic geopolitics for the rest of the century. So here's why Greenland went from frozen wasteland to contested real estate. Climate change melted the ice, revealed trillions in resources, opened strategic shipping routes, and created a power vacuum. For centuries, Greenland's remoteness protected it. The ice made it worthless. Now the ice is melting, and suddenly everyone wants a piece. The US wants strategic control. China wants resources. Russia wants Arctic dominance. The EU wants supply chain security. Denmark wants to maintain influence. And Greenlanders? They're 56,000 people watching superpowers fight over their homeland, trying to navigate a path to independence without becoming a colony again. Greenland is becoming the world's most contested piece of real estate not because anyone particularly wants to live there, but because it sits at the intersection of climate change, resource scarcity, and great power competition. The same forces that are destroying the planet are making Greenland valuable, and that might be the most depressing geographic irony of the 21st century. The ice is melting. The race for Greenland has already begun, and what happens there will determine who controls the Arctic and possibly the future of global power.